Hey, Saj Hussain here, and in this video I want to share with you 5 tips on creating fast connection when speaking to vendors, agents or property investors. Now, why is connection so important?
Daddy, I think connection is important because people do business with people they like, and it's the fast way of building rapport.
Absolutely, it's about building rapport very quickly. So whether you're speaking to that new property estate agent that you're trying to build rapport, whether you're speaking to the vendor of a property and you're trying to create some connection, I'm going to share with you 5 tips for the fastest way to do that. So first of all, tip number 1 is using people's names. We all love the sound of our name. So when you're speaking to somebody, it's important to ask them their name, but also ask the pronunciation of their name, because sometimes if you're pronouncing somebody's name incorrectly, you may be offending them as opposed to building rapport. So it's creating that connection very quickly by regularly using someone's name within the conversation and not overusing it too. So not with every sentence have their name in that. So remember, when you're speaking to somebody, just dropping their name into the conversation, that instantly helps create that likability and that fast connection as well. So the other thing is when you're having a conversation, so if I'm looking over here, I'm not really creating much connection over here. So looking into people's eyes when you're speaking is also a powerful way of creating connection very quickly. And when you're answering somebody's question, quite often we will answer in a way where we look down or we look up to recall information. But if you can keep that and maintain that eye contact when you're speaking to somebody, it's also a great way of creating that connection, and also it creates some sincerity in what you're doing as well. And that leads me on to step number 3, because when we're speaking, it's important that we're also listening to what's being said and not just hearing the sounds. So what I mean by that is that quite often when we're having a conversation with somebody, we're hearing what's being said, but actually, are we listening? Because quite often we hear the sounds, and what we're doing is we're preparing a response. We're thinking about what we're going to say, as opposed to listening and hearing what's been said so we can understand it. And it's really about using these and this in the right proportion. So listening much more than actually speaking. And when people are speaking to us, it's making sure we're paying attention and focusing. So for instance, for a networking event and you're speaking to somebody, you're not kind of glancing over here and kind of looking over here. You're staying focused on that person. You're listening very carefully to what's being said and understanding, so that you can actually give them a response to what they're saying. And tip number 3. Sorry, that was 3. One is person's name, 2 is listen. Let's start again. Tip number 1 is using people's names. Tip number 2 is looking directly in their eyes. Tip number 3 is to listen when you're speaking. And tip number 4 is to ask people's opinion. So what I mean by that is when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're speaking to them, you can ask them, so what's your thoughts on that? So what do you think is the best way to approach that? And what you're doing is you're giving somebody else an opportunity to respond accordingly, give their opinion. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody loves to share their opinion. Now here's the thing. You may not necessarily agree with their opinion, but it's important that you ask the opinion so that you're giving the other person an opportunity to respond. And then finally, tip number 5 is touch. So what I mean by that is that it creates a fast connection if you just touch somebody on the shoulder, or when you're shaking hands, you shake somebody's hands. That connection there is also a great way to speed up and a fast way of building rapport. So hey, look, I hope you found this useful. What would be really helpful for me for you to share your 1 tip on this video, just comment below, and I shall see you, or we shall see you on the next video.